Dr. Henry Brooks sat in his office at Harmony Point, looking at his computer screen. The medical station floated in space between human and alien territories. He worked as a doctor who specialized in helping different alien species with health problems. Today seemed like any normal day until Commander Lisa Martin walked into his office. Lisa had a strange look on her face. She seemed worried but also curious about something. Henry looked up from his work and waited for her to speak. "We have an unusual situation," Lisa said as she sat down. "An alien ship just arrived. They brought someone who needs medical help. They asked specifically for a human doctor." Henry felt surprised. The Valtherans almost never asked humans for medical help. They preferred their own doctors. The Val looked like walking crystals, and their bodies worked completely different from humans or most other aliens. "What kind of problem do they have?" Henry asked. "Something about having children," Lisa answered. "They would not say more than that. The strange part is that this person came alone. Valtherans always bring family members when dealing with reproductive issues. Coming alone is very unusual for them." Henry felt his curiosity growing. He opened his medical database and started reading about Valtheran biology. 20 minutes later, he waited in the examination room for his new patient. The door opened and Kiratel walked in. Henry immediately noticed something different about her. Most Valtherans stood about 6.5 feet tall. They had thin bodies made of crystal that glowed with blue light. Kiratel was much taller, almost 8 feet. Her crystal body was thicker and stronger. She glowed with deep blue and purple colors that Henry thought looked beautiful. "Dr. Brooks," she said in perfect English. Her voice sounded musical like most Valtherans. "Thank you for seeing me. I heard you work with alien reproduction problems. Please sit down," Henry said, pointing to a special chair built to hold heavier aliens. "Yes, that is one of my specialties. Commander Martin told me you came about reproductive issues." Kiratel sat down carefully. Her crystal body became dimmer, which Henry knew meant she felt sad or upset. "Doctor, my people told me I am too large to have children," she said quietly. "The medical authorities on my world say my body is wrong. They say my crystal structure is too dense and my internal chambers are too big. They removed me from the reproductive registry. They told me I must accept a life without children." Henry listened carefully while pulling up more information on his screen. "When did they make this decision?" 3 years ago. I was 25 years old then. I am 28 now." Kiratel's glow flickered like a candle in wind. "In my culture, those who cannot have children are considered incomplete. I lost my job and my social status. My bonded partner left me. I came here because I heard humans often question what others accept as truth. You want a second opinion?" "I want the truth," Kiratel said, with more strength in her voice. Her glow became brighter. "If my people are correct, I will accept it and find a different path. But if there is any chance they are wrong, I must know. I need to understand if my body is truly broken or if the understanding of my body is what needs to change." Henry felt excitement building inside him. Throughout his career, he had found many cases where old medical rules did not match biological facts. The universe was huge and evolution created endless variety. What looked wrong in one situation might actually be an advantage in another. "Kiratel, I would like to do a complete examination. This will take several hours. I need to scan your entire body in detail. I cannot promise anything, but I promise you honesty. Whatever we discover, I will tell you the complete truth." For the first time since entering the room, Kiratel's crystal body glowed brighter with what might have been hope. "That is all I ask, Doctor." For the next 4 hours, Henry performed the most detailed examination he had ever done on a Valtheran. He scanned her crystal structure with different types of equipment. He mapped her internal chambers. He analyzed her biochemistry and studied the sound patterns of her reproductive system. Lisa came to help him analyze all the data. What Henry discovered made him stop and check the readings 3 times. He could not believe what he was seeing. "Kiratel," he finally said, showing her holographic images comparing her body to Avra's Val. "I need to explain something about how I practice medicine. In human history, we had similar situations. People were told their bodies were wrong based on arbitrary standards. We learned that variation is not a flaw, it is adaptation." He pointed to several areas in the images. "Your reproductive chambers are indeed larger than average, about 30% more space. Your crystal density is higher, making your body stronger. Your sound patterns are lower but more stable." "So they were correct," Kiratel said quietly. Her light dimmed again. "No," Henry said firmly. "They were completely wrong. Kiratel, you are not too large to have children. Your body is not broken. If anything, you are evolutionarily advanced for your species. The room became silent except for the soft hum of medical equipment. Kiratel stared at him. Her entire crystal body began to pulse with strong emotion. "I do not understand," she whispered. Henry showed her a computer simulation he had created. "The standard Valthran reproductive process works but has limitations. The offspring must stay small enough to develop in chambers that are barely big enough. Your chambers could support offspring 30 to 40% larger than average. Your stronger crystal body could handle the extra weight without stress. Your stable sound patterns would provide a safer environment for development." He looked directly at her. "Someone decided that average equals correct. But in biology, average simply means common. Your people have defined reproductive ability based on the middle range and declared everything else abnormal. But you are not abnormal, Kiratel, you are exceptional. Your body is not too large for children. It is perfectly designed for strong, healthy children." Kiratel stood up from the examination chair. Her full height was impressive in the medical room. Her crystal body blazed with light that reflected across the walls in rainbow colors. "How can this be true?" she asked, her voice shaking with emotion. "Our medical science has existed for thousands of years. The elders have studied reproduction extensively. How could they be wrong? Because sometimes knowledge becomes tradition," Henry said gently, "and tradition stops asking questions. In human medicine, we discovered that many of our standards were based on studying only certain groups of people. When we looked at more people, we found that variation we had called abnormal was actually healthy diversity." Lisa stepped forward with her computer tablet. "Kiratel, I have been reading Valthran medical books about reproductive standards. The baseline measurements they use were established 800 years ago. They have not been changed since then. 800 years of telling people like you that you are broken," Henry added, "when the truth is that your people's understanding has not kept up with natural variation in your population." Kiratel turned away and walked to the window. She looked out at the stars for several minutes. Her internal light shifted through complex patterns that Henry recognized as deep thought and strong feelings. "What do I do with this information, Dr. Brooks?" she finally asked. "Return to my world and tell them that centuries of medical teaching are wrong. They exiled me. Who will listen?" "We start by documenting everything," Henry said. "We gather the evidence. We build a case that cannot be disputed. Then we present it not just to your people but to the wider medical community. Change does not happen overnight, but it does happen. The first step is knowing the truth. The second is refusing to let that truth be silenced." Kiratel turned back to face them. She stood straighter with new determination. "And we take those steps, Doctor." Together, Henry nodded, feeling the weight of what they were starting. Challenging the medical establishment of an entire alien species would not be easy. But as he looked at Kiratel, standing tall and brilliant in the medical room, he knew some battles were worth fighting. "Together," he agreed, "we will prove that you were never broken. Your people's understanding of you was what needed to change." News about Dr. Brooks' findings spread quickly through Harmony Point. Within 2 days, Henry had to present his research to a review board. What surprised him was that the board included Elder Zintar, one of the most respected medical authorities in Valthran space. Elder Zintar was very old. His crystal body showed the cracks and patterns that came with many centuries of life. His glow was controlled and serious. "I came personally when I heard about these claims," Zintar said to the gathered doctors and scientists. "Dr. Brooks, you are making extraordinary statements that contradict basic principles of Valthran reproductive medicine." Henry stood confidently. His presentation materials floated in holographic displays around the room. "Elder Zintar, I am only presenting what the data shows. Kiritel's body is not broken. It is different, certainly, but different in ways that suggest reproductive advantages, not problems. You examine one individual and claim to understand our species better than our own medical experts." Zintar's voice was skeptical but not angry. "We have studied reproduction for thousands of years, Doctor. Our standards exist to protect our people." Commander Lisa Martin stood up from her seat. "Elder Zintar, with respect, Dr. Brooks is not claiming to understand your species better. He is suggesting that your current understanding may be incomplete. Science advances by questioning established ideas." Another voice joined the discussion. Dr. Patricia Cole, a human physician who studied comparative anatomy, stood and pointed to the data displays. "I have reviewed Dr. Brooks' findings independently. The physical evidence is strong. Kiritel's reproductive system shows no disease. The structures are proportional to her larger body. The biochemistry is healthy. The stress models actually suggest better outcomes than in smaller individuals." Zintar moved closer to the holographic displays. He studied them with intense focus that dimmed his own glow. These measurements indicate chamber dimensions 32% larger than the optimal range. Optimal according to whose definition? Henry asked carefully. Elder, I have studied your medical books. The optimal range was defined based on population averages from 800 years ago. But optimal for reproduction is not the same as average. Often the strongest outcomes come from individuals at the extremes of healthy variation. A Valtheran physician named Kellerer who worked at Harmony Point spoke up. Elder Zintar, I must admit that Dr. Brooks' analysis raises questions I have had in my own practice. I have seen individuals denied reproductive status who appeared physically healthy. I thought my observations were wrong because of my limited experience. Perhaps my observations were more accurate than I believed. Zintar turned to face Kellerer. His light patterns showed surprise. You have doubts about our protocols. I have questions, Elder Kilara said respectfully. Science should encourage questions. A conference room filled with conversation as other physicians began debating among themselves. Henry could see opinions dividing between those interested in the new perspective and those defending established teaching. Zintar raised his hand and silence fell. Dr. Brooks, I will not dismiss your findings completely, but you must understand what is at stake. If we declare that our reproductive standards have been wrong for centuries, we could destabilize the entire social structure around reproduction in our culture. Individuals who have accepted their status as unsuitable may demand revaluation. The reproductive registry system, which governs everything from social standing to resource distribution, could face major disruption. With respect, Elder, Henry said quietly, the stakes for individuals like Kiratel are equally high. She has been exiled from her community and told her body is broken when it is not. How many others have suffered the same unjust fate? The social disruption of truth is still better than the ongoing harm of being wrong. Zintar was silent for a long moment. His internal structures created complex light patterns that Henry could not fully understand. Finally, he spoke. I propose a compromise. Dr. Brooks, you will conduct a comprehensive study. We will provide you with data on other Valtheran individuals who have been deemed unsuitable for reproduction due to size differences. You will examine them, document your findings, and present a full report to the Valtheran Medical Council. Only then, with substantial evidence, should we consider changing protocols that have served our people for generations. And Henry asked. Kiritel's case will remain under review until the outcome of your research, Zintar said. If your findings hold across a larger sample, we will reconsider her status. But I warn you, Doctor, you are challenging not just medical teaching but cultural beliefs deeply woven into our society. Proceed carefully. After the meeting ended, Henry found Kiritel waiting in the corridor outside the conference room. Her glow was anxious, moving between bright hope and dim worry. They want more proof, Henry told her, which is actually a good sign. Elder Zintar did not dismiss the findings completely. He wants a full study. How long will that take? Kiritel asked. Months, possibly longer, Henry admitted. But Kiritel, this is bigger than just your case now. If we can prove that the reproductive standards have been excluding healthy individuals, we can change things for many others. Kiritel nodded slowly. I understand, Doctor. I am willing to wait, but I admit, having tasted hope after so long without it, the waiting will be hard. Lisa joined them, carrying her computer tablet. I have been authorized to help coordinate the study. We are already receiving applications from Valtheran individuals who have been excluded from reproduction due to size differences. Word has spread, and they want to be examined. How many applications? Henry asked. 47 in the last 2 hours, Lisa said, raising her eyebrows. And the number keeps growing. Henry felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. This had started as one patient seeking a second opinion. Now it was becoming a potential major change in Valtheran medicine and society. Then we should start, he said. We have much work to do. Over the following weeks, Harmony Point became the center of an unexpected medical phenomenon. Valtheran individuals from across their territories traveled to the station. Many of them had been living in the shadows of their society, deemed unsuitable for one of the most basic aspects of their culture. Henry and his growing team of researchers examined each volunteer with careful attention. They documented physical measurements, ran stress simulations, analyzed biochemical markers, and created detailed comparison models. Dr. Patricia Cole brought in specialists in evolutionary biology. Kylera worked with Valtheran medical institutions to access historical health records while carefully managing political sensitivities. What emerged from the data was clear. Individuals who had been excluded from reproduction due to size differences consistently showed physical advantages. Their larger bodies supported stronger crystal structures, Their expanded reproductive chambers could accommodate more robust fetal development. Their biochemical profiles indicated better stress tolerance. But resistance to the findings grew as well. Conservative groups within Valtharan medical circles began publishing arguments against the study. Some accused Henry of human interference in Valtharan culture. Others suggested the study was biased, designed to achieve predetermined results. One evening, 3 months into the research, Henry sat in his office reviewing the latest criticism when Kiratel entered. She had become an unofficial ambassador for the study, working with volunteers and helping navigate the cultural complexities. "You look tired, Doctor," she observed, sitting in the reinforced chair he had installed for Valtharan visitors. "It has been a long day," Henry admitted. "I just read an editorial from a medical board on your homeworld. They called this study a dangerous experiment that risks the health of Valtharan society. They are afraid," Kiratel said simply. "Change frightens those who benefit from the current system." "Do you think we can actually change things?" Henry asked, voicing the doubt that had been growing in his mind. "The evidence is strong, but evidence does not always win against entrenched belief." Kiratel was quiet for a moment. Her light dimmed in thought. Then she brightened again, her glow taking on a determined quality. "Dr. Brooks, before I came to Harmony Point, I had accepted that my life would be one of exclusion. I believed what I had been told, that my body was wrong, that I was less than others. You gave me the truth. Even if nothing else changes, even if the medical council rejects every finding, you changed my life. You changed the lives of every individual who came here and learned they were not broken." She leaned forward. "That matters, Doctor. That is worth fighting for. Eventually, truth becomes undeniable. We just have to be patient and persistent enough to keep presenting it until the world catches up." Henry felt his determination return. Kiratel was right. The scientific evidence was solid. The moral reason was clear. The rest was just persistence. "You are absolutely right," he said. "We keep going. We finish the study, we compile the evidence, and we present it so clearly that it becomes impossible to ignore." A notification sounded on his computer. Lisa's face appeared on the screen. "Henry, you need to see this. Elder Zintar just sent a message. He wants to meet with you privately." The private meeting room was neutral territory, a small conference space that could adjust for different alien species. Elder Zintar was already there when Henry and Kiratel arrived. He stood before a large window that showed the swirling colors of a nearby nebula. "Dr. Brooks," Kiratel Zintar greeted them. His tone was hard to read. "Thank you for meeting with me privately. What I wish to discuss is sensitive and requires discretion." They sat down. Henry felt the tension in the air. Zintar dimmed his glow, a sign of vulnerability that Henry had rarely seen in any Valtharan, especially one of such high status. "I have reviewed all of your preliminary findings," Zintar began. "The data is strong. The methodology is sound. Your conclusions are difficult to argue against from a purely scientific standpoint, but," Henry prompted, sensing the coming objection. "But I must tell you something that very few know," Zintar said slowly. "Something that explains why this research will face opposition that has nothing to do with science." The elder moved away from the window. His ancient crystal body caught the light in ways that showed countless years of life. 400 years ago, our population faced a crisis. A genetic mutation had begun spreading through certain family lines. It caused reproductive failures. Offspring were not surviving development. Our birth rate dropped dramatically. We were facing potential extinction. Henry leaned forward, his medical training focusing his attention. "What kind of mutation?" "It affected the crystal structure development in unborn offspring," Zintar explained. "The mutation created instability in the growing crystal matrix. In smaller reproductive chambers, the instability led to complete structural failure. The offspring could not develop properly." Kiratel's glow brightened with sudden understanding. "But in larger chambers, they could." Zintar turned to her. His light pulsed with what might have been regret. "Yes. Individuals with larger bodies and more spacious reproductive chambers had significantly higher success rates. The extra space allowed the unstable structures to stabilize before reaching critical mass. But our medical establishment, fearing what they did not fully understand, made a terrible decision. They restricted reproduction to those with average-sized chambers," Henry said, the pieces falling into place. "They treated the symptom instead of the cause." "Worse," Zintar said, his voice heavy. "They declared that larger bodies were the problem. They theorized that the larger chambers were causing the instability, that they represented a deviation from ideal Valtharan biology. They implemented restrictions on who could reproduce, excluding those with bodies above a certain size. The reproductive registry was established, turning these restrictions into law. The conference room fell silent as the implications settled over them. The genetic mutation eventually stabilized on its own, Zintar continued. Over several generations, natural selection resolved the crisis. But by then, the restrictions had become established practice. The social structures built around the reproductive registry had become fundamental to our society, and the original reason for the restrictions was lost, buried in medical archives that few ever read. You knew this? Kiratel asked, her voice strained. You knew that the restrictions were based on a misunderstanding. I discovered the truth only recently, Zintar said. While researching the historical context for Dr. Brooks' study, the records were incomplete, fragmented, stored in old data formats that required significant effort to access and translate. But yes, Kiratel, I know now. The standards that have governed reproduction for centuries are based on fear and incomplete information, not on sound biological science. Henry felt anger rising within him, but forced himself to remain calm and focused. Elder Zintar, why are you telling us this now? Because I am old, Zintar said simply. Because I have spent my life believing I was upholding medical truth, only to discover I was continuing an ancient error. Because I have seen the pain in Kiratel's glow and in the light of every individual who has come to this station seeking validation that they are not broken. The elder's crystal body seemed to droop slightly, as if the weight of centuries pressed down upon him. And because, Dr. Brooks, you were right. The social disruption of truth is better than the ongoing harm of being wrong. But you must understand, correcting this error will require more than presenting scientific data. It will require dismantling social structures, challenging power hierarchies, and forcing my people to face the fact that we have caused terrible suffering based on a mistake made 4 centuries ago. What do you propose? Lisa asked. She had been given permission to join the meeting as a witness. I will support your research publicly, Zintar said. I will use my authority within the medical council to advocate for re-evaluating reproductive standards. But I need more than data from you. I need a clear path forward. If we acknowledge that the standards are wrong, how do we handle the registry? How do we address the social disruption? How do we help individuals who have built lives around their registered status, whether excluded or included? Kiratel stood. Her full, impressive height brought her nearly eye level with the elder. You handle it with honesty, elders. You admit the mistake. You apologize to those who were harmed. You reform the system to be based on actual biological science rather than cultural fear. And you do it knowing that it will be difficult and uncomfortable, but that it is right. Zintar regarded her for a long moment. You have great strength, Kirat. Perhaps that is the true advantage of your larger body. Not just physical strength, but the strength of character needed to withstand unjust exclusion and still fight for truth. I learned that strength from being rejected, Kiratel said quietly. I would prefer that future generations not require the same education. Henry pulled up a holographic display, showing the data they had compiled. Elder, we have examined 93 individuals so far who were excluded from the registry due to size differences. Every single one shows physical advantages for reproduction. Not one shows the disease that the restrictions claim to prevent. The evidence is overwhelming. Then we present it, Zintar decided. In 1 month, I will gather a special session of the Valtheran Medical Council. Dr. Brooks, you will present your findings completely. I will present the historical context, and we will force my people to face an uncomfortable truth. 1 month, Henry repeated. We will be ready. The meeting ended. As they left the conference room, Lisa pulled Henry aside while Kiratel spoke briefly with Zintar. Henry, this is huge, Lisa said quietly. If you succeed, you are not just changing medical policy, you are potentially reshaping an entire society. I know, Henry said, feeling the weight of it, and I am terrified that I will make a mistake, that I will miss something, that the council will find a way to dismiss the evidence. You will not be alone, Lisa assured him. You have built a team. You have allies within the Valtheran community, and you have the truth on your side. That has to count for something. Over the following month, Harmony Point became a center of intense preparation. Henry and his team refined their data, created comprehensive visualizations, and prepared for every possible objection. Patricia Cole worked with evolutionary biologists to provide context for how populations develop different traits. Kalara worked with progressive Valtheran physicians to build support within their medical community. Corrado became more than a patient. She became a collaborator, helping the team understand the cultural details and social implications of their findings. She worked with other excluded individuals, many of whom agreed to share their stories as part of the presentation. The night before the council session, Henry could not sleep. He stood in his quarters, reviewing the presentation for the 100th time, when his door chimed. Kiratel entered, carrying 2 containers of glowing fluid, a Valtheran drink that Henry had grown to like. "You need rest, Doctor. I keep thinking about what could go wrong," Henry admitted. "What if the Council is to set in their ways? What if political concerns override scientific evidence? Then we will have done everything we could," Kiratel said, handing him a container. "Dr. Brooks, you have already succeeded in the most important way. You gave hope to individuals who had none. You challenged assumptions that needed challenging. Whatever happens tomorrow, that cannot be undone." They stood together at the window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere in that vast darkness were worlds full of Valtheran individuals who had been told they were not good enough, not right enough, not normal enough to participate in one of life's basic experiences. "Tomorrow we fight for them," Henry said. "Tomorrow we speak truth," Kirito corrected. "And we trust that truth is powerful enough to overcome fear." As the station's lights dimmed for night, Henry finally allowed himself to rest, knowing that the next day would determine not just the outcome of their research, but potentially the future of an entire species' understanding of themselves. The Valtheran Medical Council chamber was an imposing space, designed to reflect the importance of the decisions made within its walls. Crystal pillars rose to a domed ceiling that split light into complex patterns, creating an atmosphere of both beauty and seriousness. The council members sat in a semicircular arrangement, their various sizes and light patterns representing the diversity of Valtheran medical expertise. Elder Zintar stood at the center, his ancient form commanding respect. "Honored council members, we meet today to hear evidence that challenges basic assumptions of our reproductive medicine. I ask that you listen with open minds and judge the science on its merits, not on tradition or comfort." Henry stood at the presentation platform. His human form was small compared to the Valtheran surrounding him, but his presence was amplified by the importance of his message. Behind him, holographic displays waited to show data and evidence. "Honored Council," Henry began. His voice was steady, despite his nerves. "I come before you not to criticize Valtheran medicine, but to present evidence that suggests our understanding of reproductive biology can be expanded and improved. Science is not static. It grows as we gather new data and challenge old assumptions." He activated the first display, showing comparison scans. "Over the past 4 months, my team has conducted comprehensive examinations of 93 Valtheran individuals who were excluded from the reproductive registry due to body size exceeding established parameters. We have found that not only are these individuals physically capable of reproduction, but their different anatomy actually gives significant advantages." Murmurs spread through the council chamber. One member, a physician named Sirath, known for his conservative views, stood. "Dr. Brooks, you examine individuals with significant physical deviation and claim this deviation is advantageous. This contradicts centuries of observed medical outcomes." "With respect," Council Member Sirath Henry replied, "I ask that you examine the data before reaching conclusions. These displays show reproductive chamber dimensions, crystal density measurements, biochemical stability markers, and stress tolerance simulations across our entire sample group." The holographic displays bloomed into complex visualizations, showing the measurements in clear detail. Patricia Cole stood to provide supporting analysis. "What we observe is not deviation from healthy function, but variation within healthy function. The individuals studied show no disease. Their systems are proportional, balanced, and in many cases, superior in stress tolerance to individuals within the current accepted parameters." Another council member, a physician specializing in fetal development, stood. "Dr. Cole, Dr. Brooks, these measurements are striking, but how do you explain the historical basis for our restrictions? Our ancestors did not create these parameters randomly. This was the moment they had prepared for." Zintar stepped forward, his glow grave. Council member Valana raises a crucial point, and this is where I must share information that has been lost to time. The elder activated his own holographic display, showing ancient medical records that had been carefully restored. 400 years ago, our people faced a genetic crisis. A mutation affecting crystal development in unborn offspring threatened our population. During this crisis, our medical establishment observed that reproductive failures were associated with certain individuals. In their urgency to address the crisis, they established restrictions on who could reproduce, excluding those with larger bodies. He paused, allowing the information to sink in, but they made a critical error in interpretation. The larger-bodied individuals were not causing the problem. They were actually more resistant to it. The restrictions were put in place based on incomplete understanding and fear. By the time the genetic crisis resolved naturally through genetic drift, the restrictions had become established practice. The original context was lost, but the policies remained. The council chamber erupted into shocked conversation. Council members turned to each other, their glow patterns showing agitation, disbelief, and growing understanding. Sirath's voice rose above the others. Elder Zintar, you present ancient records and claim they overturn established medical practice. How do we know these records are accurate? How do we know they are not simply another interpretation of events? Kiratel stepped forward, her impressive height and brilliant glow commanding attention. Because you can see the evidence in every individual who came to Harmony Point seeking validation. In me. In the 92 others who were told they were unsuitable when they were actually superior. The historical context explains how the error occurred. The current data proves that it is an error. A younger council member named Thaurix stood, his glow bright with what appeared to be excitement. I have reviewed Dr. Brooks' data in detail. I have consulted with colleagues across multiple medical institutions. The science is sound. We have the opportunity here to correct a historic mistake and improve the lives of countless individuals, and destabilize our entire social structure around reproduction, Sirath countered. The registry governs resource distribution, social standing, family formation. If we declare it fundamentally flawed, we create chaos. We create justice, Kiratel said firmly. The chaos of correcting an error is better than the continued suffering of those harmed by it. Elder Zintar raised his hand for silence. Council members, I propose we focus on the science first. The social implications are significant, yes, but they are secondary to the fundamental question. Is our current reproductive doctrine based on accurate biological science or on historical error? For the next 3 hours, the council examined every aspect of Henry's research. They questioned methodology, challenged interpretations, and debated implications. Henry and his team responded to each question with detailed evidence, maintaining their composure even when faced with hostile questioning. Clara presented case studies of individuals who had been excluded from the registry and had since led healthy, productive lives, demonstrating that their exclusion had been purely social rather than medical. Patricia Cole provided comparative evolutionary analysis, showing how different traits often emerged as adaptive advantages in biological populations. As the session continued, Henry could see the tide beginning to turn. More council members were engaging with the data rather than automatically defending tradition. Questions shifted from hostile to genuinely curious. Even Sirath, while still skeptical, began asking technical questions that suggested he was wrestling with the evidence rather than dismissing it. Finally, as the chamber's light shifted toward evening patterns, Valana stood again. Elder Zintar, fellow council members, I move that we commission a formal review of our reproductive standards based on the evidence presented today. We should establish a committee to work with Dr. Brooks and his team to conduct additional research and develop evidence-based revisions to our current protocols. I second the motion. Thaurix said immediately. Sirath stood slowly, his glow subdued. I do not easily set aside beliefs I have held throughout my career, but I cannot ignore what I have seen today. I will not block this motion, though I reserve the right to participate in the review process and ensure that any changes are implemented carefully. Elder Zintar's glow brightened. Then we will vote. All in favor of establishing a formal review committee and reassessing our reproductive standards. The chamber filled with light as council members signaled their agreement. Not unanimous, but a clear majority. Henry felt a wave of relief so intense it nearly made him dizzy. The motion carries, Zintar announced. Dr. Brooks, you and your team will work with our newly formed committee to expand your research and develop recommendations for updating our standards. Kiratel, your personal case will be immediately re-evaluated under the new review process. After the session ended, Henry found himself surrounded by Valtheran physicians. Some congratulated him, others asked technical questions. Kiratel stood nearby, her glow blazing with an intensity he had never seen before. When the crowd finally dispersed, Kiratel approached him. Dr. Brooks, I do not have words adequate to express my gratitude. We have not finished yet, Henry cautioned. The review process will take time. Implementing changes throughout Valtheran society will take even longer. But we have begun, Kiratel said. That is everything. Lisa joined them, her expression showing both exhaustion and joy. Henry, you did it. You actually challenged the medical establishment of an entire species and won. We are not done, Henry repeated, but he allowed himself a small smile. But yes, we cleared the first major hurdle. Elder Zintar approached, his ancient form moving with dignity. Dr. Brooks, Kiritel, what you have accomplished today will affect our society for generations, not just in medicine, but in how we think about difference, about normal, about what bodies can do versus what we assume they can do. What happens next? Henry asked. Next, we do the hard work of implementing change, Zintar said. We revise protocols, we retrain physicians, we reevaluate every individual who was excluded from the registry. We face the uncomfortable truth of how many lives were diminished by our error, and we ensure that future generations benefit from your courage in challenging us. As they left the council chamber, 6 months after the council session, Harmony Point had changed into a center for reproductive medicine that served not just excluded but individuals from multiple species seeking second opinions on conventional medical wisdom. Henry's work had started conversations across the interstellar medical community about how standards were established and who they accidentally excluded. But today, Henry's focus was on a single patient in a specially designed medical suite. Kiritel lay on a special examination platform. Her crystal body glowed with a pattern Henry had learned to recognize as nervous excitement. The readings are strong, Dr. Patricia Cole said, studying the holographic displays around the platform. All indicators are excellent. Carla worked at a nearby console, monitoring Valtheran-specific biochemical markers. Sound patterns are stable and well within optimal ranges. Better than optimal, actually. Henry stepped closer to Kiritel, his scanner in hand. Are you ready? I have been ready for this my entire life, Kiritel said softly. I am also terrified. That's completely normal, Henry assured her. He activated the deep structure scanner, the device humming as it went through the layers of crystal that made up Valtheran bodies. On the holographic display, a three-dimensional image began to form. There, inside Kiritel's reproductive chamber, was a developing offspring. The small crystal structure pulsed with its own internal light, the rhythmic sound indicating healthy development, Kiritel Henry said, his voice thick with emotion. Your child is developing beautifully. Kiritel's glow flared so brightly that everyone in the medical suite had to adjust their eye protection. My child, she whispered, as if testing the words. I have a child growing within me. Patricia leaned in to examine the detailed scans. The fetal structure is approximately 35% larger than typical Valtheran development at this stage. The crystal formation is denser, more complex. Kiritel, your larger reproductive chamber is not just accommodating this development, it is optimizing it. How far along? Kiritel asked, based on the sound patterns and structural development. About 6 weeks, Keela answered. Still very early, but all indications are positive. The offspring is thriving. Over the following weeks, Henry monitored Kiritel's progression carefully. Each examination showed continued healthy development. The offspring was indeed larger than standard, growing at a rate that would have been impossible in a smaller reproductive chamber. But in Kiritel's spacious internal environment, the accelerated growth was accommodated perfectly. Word of Kiritel's pregnancy spread through Valthoran communities and beyond. She became a symbol of hope for others who had been excluded from the registry. Henry's clinic at Harmony Point was flooded with requests for Valtheran individuals traveled from across their territories seeking confirmation that they too might bear children. The formal review committee established by the medical council worked alongside Henry's team, conducting their own studies and gradually coming to the same conclusions. Thaurix, the young council member who had supported the research, became a vocal advocate for reform. Even Sirath, after extensive review of the data, publicly acknowledged that the traditional standards had been flawed. 3 months into Kiritel's pregnancy, Elder Zinter visited Harmony Point for a scheduled examination. Henry had invited him to observe, both as a courtesy and as a statement about transparency in the new approach to Valtheran reproductive medicine. The offspring's sound pattern is remarkable, Zinter observed, studying the scans. I have monitored thousands of pregnancies in my career, and I have never seen such stable, strong development patterns, because you were working within the constraints of smaller reproductive chambers, Henry explained. This is what Valtheran reproduction can look like when the parent's body has the space and strength to fully support development. Kiritel is not an exception. She is what should have been recognized as an advantage all along. Zintar's glow dimmed with what Henry had learned to recognize as regret. How many generations did we lose to our error, Dr. Brooks? How many strong offspring were never conceived because we excluded the very individuals best suited to bear them? We cannot change the past, Kiritel said gently from the examination platform, but we can ensure the future is different. Elder Zinter, you helped make that possible. You chose truth over comfort. That matters. The elder approached Kiratel, his ancient form moving with careful deliberation. Your child will be born into a different world than you were. A world where different is not disease, where variation is not deficiency. That is the beginning of redemption for our era, though it can never fully compensate for the harm we caused. As the months progressed, Kirito's pregnancy continued to exceed all expectations. The offspring grew strong and healthy, its crystal structure developing with exceptional complexity. Henry documented every stage, building a comprehensive record that would serve as a new model for Valtheran reproductive medicine. Other excluded individuals, who had been re-evaluated and approved for reproduction, began their own conception journeys. Each success story reinforced the evidence that the old standards had been fundamentally wrong. Each pregnancy represented not just a personal miracle, but a step toward systemic change. 9 months after conception, Henry stood in the birthing suite as Kiratel prepared to bring her child into the world. Valtheran births were different from human births, involving a crystallization process that Henry had studied extensively but never witnessed in person. The final sound pattern is beginning, Kalara announced, monitoring the specialized equipment. The offspring is ready. Kiratel's glow pulsed in rhythmic waves, her entire body participating in the process of bringing forth new life. The crystallization required precise sound patterns, and in the spacious chamber of her reproductive system, those patterns had room to develop fully. Over the next several hours, Henry watched in awe as the biological miracle unfolded. The offspring's structure completed its final crystallization, separating from the parent body in a process that was simultaneously alien and utterly familiar in its fundamental nature of bringing new life into existence. When the process completed, a small Valtheran infant emerged, already showing the characteristic glow of conscious life. The child was indeed larger than typical Valtheran newborns, with a crystal structure that was dense and complex, refracting light in brilliant patterns. It is a male, Kalara announced, and he is perfect. Kiratel reached for her son with trembling hands, cradling the small crystal form against her own larger structure. Her glow blazed with joy so intense it seemed to fill the entire medical suite. "My son," she said, her voice resonating with emotion, "I was told I would never hold a child of my own. I was told my body was wrong, and now I hold the proof that it was never broken." Henry felt tears streaming down his face. He did not bother to wipe them away. This was why he had become a doctor. This moment, when scientific truth translated into flourishing life, Patricia recorded the final measurements, shaking her head in wonder. "He is 40% larger than average Valtheran newborns, with exceptional structural density. He is going to grow into an incredibly strong individual, because his mother had the physical capacity to support that development," Henry said, "because we recognized that what others called too large was actually perfectly designed." Elder Zintar entered the birthing suite, having waited outside during the delivery. He approached Keratul slowly, his ancient glow subdued with emotion. He asked, gesturing toward the infant. Kiratel nodded. Carefully passing her son to the elder, Zintar held the child with practiced care, studying the young Valtheran with an intensity that spoke of more than medical interest. "This child represents more than one new life," Zintar said softly. "He represents the beginning of a corrected future for our people. Every child born to parents who were previously excluded, every strong offspring that comes into existence because we finally understood what bodies can truly do. These are the living proof that science must always question itself." He handed the infant back to "What will you name him?" Kiratel looked down at her son, then up at Henry. "With your permission, Dr. Brooks, I would like to name him Hal Brooks, incorporating your name into our tradition. Without you, he would never have existed. You gave me not just hope, but the truth that allowed this miracle." Henry was momentarily speechless, deeply moved by the honor. "Kiratel, I would be honored, but you know the real miracle was not me. It was your body, doing exactly what it was designed to do once we stopped telling it that it could not." News of the birth spread rapidly through both Valtheran and interstellar communities. Hal Brooks became more than just one infant. He became a symbol of what was possible when science challenged its own assumptions. The images of Kiratel holding her son, released with her permission, started conversations across multiple worlds about medical standards, social exclusion, and the courage required to admit when systems are wrong. The Valtheran Medical Council accelerated its reform process. Within a year, the old reproductive registry system was completely restructured. Thousands of individuals who had been excluded were Many began their own journeys toward parenthood.